Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the first episode of Abundant and Ambitious for 2026. I cannot believe I am saying welcome to season 2 of Abundant and Ambitious because this time 12 months ago, I didn't even know I wanted a podcast. So welcome back and welcome to the year of the fire horse. If you don't know much about Chinese zodiac, don't stress. I'm going to cover a little bit of it today. But I thought, what better way to introduce 2026 by doing a little bit of a reflection on 2025? Because for those of you who don't know much about Chinese zodiac, it was a wood snake year last year. So a lot of people felt that it was really heavy, that they were shedding, they were going through identity shifting. And I know myself, like last year required more of me emotionally than any other year to date. So we are going to be jumping into a lot and doing a lot of reflection. But while I have you here very quickly, if you have 2 seconds free, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button on Apple or Spotify, depending on your preferred listening spot. And also, this will be uploaded to YouTube. So if you aren't aware, jump on YouTube, type in Abundant and Ambitious, and all of this year's video episodes are going to be uploaded there. So there is a lot happening behind the scenes for the Abundant and Ambitious brand as itself, and I can't wait to take you on this journey. And if you want to know more about what I'm doing behind the scenes, you can also jump onto my Instagram account, which will be linked in the show notes, or you can type in @crystallang_ and you can see me there and know a little bit more on my day-to-day life, because I'm currently waiting on a pregnant ewe to have my baby lamb so I can show everybody about what it's like to have a hobby farm. But enough about me. Let's jump into the first episode of 2026. So for my first episode back, I really wanted to dive into a recap of 2025 because this year for the Abundant and Ambitious podcast, you are going to feel a much different presence if you haven't noticed it already. But I felt like last year I was trying to be this perfect curated human who had everything put together, but secretly behind closed doors, it was a shit show. Everything was falling apart, and I was so particular about having to have things perfection because I can be a little bit of a perfectionist at times. But I come to realize that perfectionist isn't relatable. Like, let's be honest, people look at celebrities and think how unrelatable they are, and I kind of sat in that reflection and in that mirror and shadow that I saw myself projecting and going, hang on a second, how can people know who I am authentically if I'm actually not willing to show up as my most authentic self, whether or not I stumble on a word because my brain and my mouth can't connect with one another? I can't show you who I am authentically. So this is me being it all, the most authentic version of myself, and I'm excited to take you guys along that journey. But I want to dive into a little bit about why last year felt so heavy for a lot of people. And in Chinese zodiac, it is a wood snake year. So if you don't know much, I am going to cover it briefly, but I also recommend doing a little bit of research yourself on knowing what your Chinese zodiac is. So funnily enough, I was born in the year 1995, so I am a pig zodiac, and I believe my element could be, I think it's wood. I could be wrong. I will triple check and clarify that and get back to you. But it's really important because it's really funny. My husband works with pigs. So the fact that I was born in the year of the pig and it relates to my husband's job now, what he does, is kind of wild. A little bit about the string theory. If you don't know much about that, don't stress. We're going to cover a lot this year, a lot about growth and development. But a wood snake year can be really confronting because it's requiring a lot of shedding in that snake element, but it's not a fast process because when you think of a snake in its natural habitat, they slither, they're slow, they listen. And when they do attack or when they are intentional with their actions, it isn't with force. And so you would have felt that really heavy sense of identity shifting, going through that transformation, the rebirths, the deaths, the egos, everything it was asking you to do was trying to let go of what you knew so that you could create a new baseline. So it's almost like it's asking you to let go of the things that you have built in survival, the things you've built that have helped you burn out. So the things, you do to people please, to cope, to push through. So it was asking you to let go of everything. And I know myself, I did feel like I let myself get lost, but people kind of see it as a bad thing. But I find the beauty in I let myself get lost in order to rediscover who it is that I am, create a new baseline, because the version of me I was holding on to no longer has existed. So there's no point trying to rediscover and find who I was, because that woman left long and well before I could even recognize that she had. So it's really important, if you are or you did feel lost in 2025, that it's not a bad thing, because the most beautiful thing about it is you are getting to rediscover who it is and who you are at your core, so you can come back home and feel more at home within yourself than in any phase of life that you have been through. The Year of the Snake is asking you to shed, is asking you to really reflect on the things that are no longer serving you. When we talk about the wood element of everything, and you think about a tree and all the tree lines for every year of growth, it has a ring inside the trunk. It's a slow, healing, growing journey. It's the year where we stop pushing everything and forcing things to work harder. We stop hustling and we stop feeling heavy. And it's almost like we're being asked by the Chinese zodiacs essentially to soften ourselves instead of forcing things to happen, and choose the alignment that is meant to be there, and to stop proving yourself in many areas and aspects of your life. Because I know for myself, I was trying to prove and trying to force things. And I also went through a process of being attached to things, like an abandonment wound. And I've come to learn to heal that abandonment wound, but I was really struggling to let go of things, which was also holding me back from the woman that I was becoming. When we reflect on a wood snake year, it exposes truth. It exposes a lot about your friendships. It exposes a lot about your career and about where you have been overgiving, over-explaining, and abandoning yourself and not prioritizing your boundaries. Reflecting on this as a whole, a wood snake year is asking you to expose truth about your relationships, about your friendships, about your business and your careers. It's asking you to see where you are overgiving, over-explaining, and maybe where you're abandoning your intuition just to keep the peace. So it's asking you to show you where you have been leaking energy so that you're not giving from an empty cup, and where you have been betraying yourself in such small ways. So if in 2025 you felt like you lost yourself, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means it was a return and a recalibration. You are not being broken down, but you are finding your new baseline again, and one that feels like your most authentic self. Now, in the year of the wood snake, I turned 30. And I didn't know this, but a majority of women around this age typically go through a Saturn return. And so the funny fact of going through a Saturn return being in the wood snake of the year, they are very similar in comparison to one another. But turning 30, it was almost like I had an identity crisis and was just like, holy shit, like I'm 30 and I am no longer the woman I was 10 years ago when I turned 20. I am no longer the young, naive woman, and I know I am destined and desired for so much more. It's like I went through a complete rebirth of who I was, and coming into the woman that I know I was always meant to be. I was just too afraid and scared to be vulnerable to allow her to come through. In order to be the woman that I am right now, I needed to completely lose who I was, where I was, so that I could come back to home to myself, like I was saying, with my new baseline, because I no longer represented a version of myself that did exist. 2025 stripped back a lot for people, and especially those of us who are very renowned for burnout, especially if we are ambitious. I have goals and dreams and visions, but sometimes I can get caught up in them, and that leads to burnout, especially in business. Now, 2025 asked a lot of me, but in the best ways possible. And I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but I was constantly pushing for more income, pushing for more goals, pushing for more vision. I was pushing for friendships to stay connected, even though the lifeline for those friendships had ended so long ago, because there was a version of me who was scared to be alone. There was a version of me who was scared to be rested because I didn't like sitting still. There was a version of me who thrived in absolute chaos, so I loved that busy sense of feeling. But also, at the same time, I was allowing myself to go through that burnout period, and it wasn't nice to realize that my body was willing to give up before my mind. And I really had to sit and reflect on myself and be like, if I want my dream life, where I am living everything that I say that I want to be, I have to make time for myself, prioritize my rest, and I have to also prioritizing reflecting and looking at things that are no longer serving me. And I know a lot of people went through relationship breakdowns, friendship breakdowns, career breakdowns, and starting businesses because you realize that things weren't serving you anymore, hence Year of the Snake, you were shedding, and you really came back to home to yourself to listen to what it was that you actually wanted and took the initiative to actually start that healing process. I actually became really clear in 2025 to know that I was actually outgrowing things faster than I could actually articulate. I shifted through so many identities last year that I actually couldn't articulate where I was at any point because I was going through the ego death of being the business owner who had it look like it put all together. I was letting go of an ego death of, my business is tied to my identity, so I can't fail because of that. There were so many things that I really need to let go. And one of those things that I did talk about briefly at the start was perfectionism. I can't show up as my most vulnerable, authentic self if I'm not willing to let the guard down and show you my imperfections, because sometimes I don't have it all together. Sometimes I cry in the shower because I feel like I get overwhelmed. Sometimes I'm overstimulated. Sometimes my days don't go to plan because I get so fixated on what things should sound and look like. But in reality, nothing is perfect. So that was one of the biggest ego deaths I had last year, and I am so thankful for it because I know coming into a brand new year, which is a fire year in the element and it is a horse year, horse lead with strength. Horse lead and move forward at a fast trajectory, and fire burns fast. We'll dive into the fire horse year a little bit later, but I know that going into this year, I'm going to trajectory and propel so much more further because I am coming into 2026 being my most aligned self. Now, I want to talk about the things I'm leaving in 2025 because as I step into 2026, there are things I'm consciously leaving behind, I'm leaving behind overgiving. I'm leaving behind explaining my boundaries. I'm leaving behind loyalty to versions of myself that were built on survival rather than alignment. I'm leaving behind urgency, pressure, the need to have to prove myself in order to know that I'm doing enough. If something costs me my nervous system, my peace, or my sense of self, it's not coming with me because the version of me in 2026 isn't going to overstep her boundaries. So I would love to know too. So please reach out or comment below what you are also leaving in and taking into 26 and what you're not taking into 2026, I should say. But some of the things that I'm taking into this year is a little bit different, and I know a lot of people have picked up on my energetic presence, but everything I'm doing is intentional. Everything I'm doing is stronger and quieter behind the scenes, but I'm carrying myself more intentionally and doing things that align with how I see in my values. I'm choosing depth over noise, so I'm really valuing friendships and connections that have depth, that have that sense of more that I was wanting before in friendships, instead of having a large crowd around me and feeling like I'm at my most vulnerable alone self. I'm choosing friendships and relationships that feel reciprocal and safe. So no more of this one-sided friendship type thing. And I see all these people sharing memes about, oh, it's so great to have friendships where we don't talk for 6 months and we can pick up like it's like there wasn't that timeline gap. And I'm like, that shouldn't be things that we celebrate. Like, if you can't pick up the phone and message me and be like, hey, how was your week? But then you can go and scroll on Instagram and like the person's post that you said you didn't like and comment on it. Like, it shows more to me about how you value our friendship and time. And so I am no longer allowing those friendships to come into 2026. I had to do so much reflection on these. And yeah, these weren't confrontational as such, but they were more just I stepped back and didn't put the effort in, and they naturally obviously just gravitated to not having that connection anymore. And the funny fact is, now that I've noticed that these connections are no longer there, the universe is obviously showing me signs that those connections were meant to end, because I haven't seen, I haven't heard, and I haven't run into these people. So I was obviously forcing things from a place of being scared and alone, instead of living in alignment and trusting the universe that the things that are meant to be will come to me. I'm also creating a space to think, a space to feel, and a space where I am trying to not be as reactive, especially towards my husband. I can become reactive really quickly, and I swear in a past life I must have been Latina, because I get so hot and fiery sometimes when I get burred up the wrong way. But I am giving myself space in 2026 to see why I am being reactive. And I learned this amazing concept from Hillary, I think I'm going to butcher this. I think her last name's McVeigh or McVale. I'm going to have to re-clarify this. But we did a podcast recording episode last year, which I can't wait to share. And she talks about how everything in the world is neutral, which I could not agree more with. It's when we attach emotions, that's when things can either become angry, sad, and happy. So I am learning to know that everything that happens needs to be neutral, and then I will kind of process my reactions afterwards so that I am more at peace and calm with myself. And the last thing in 2026 that I am taking, it's not about chasing, it's about embodying the version of myself that I know I can be. Because if you feel gravitated towards doing more with your life, if you feel like there is something but you just can't pinpoint it, let me tell you this. There is a version of you on a different timeline right now, living your dream life. They are pulling and tugging you towards that timeline, and that's why you can't explain you feel the way you feel about particular things that are happening in your life and why things are going a certain way, because there is that version of you that is your higher self living the life you want. They are trying to pull you into it. It's just whether or not you're willing to take action and accountability to help yourself reach there. So 2026 is all about the year of being intentional, being more restrictive on where I'm letting my energy go. But it's also the fire horse year, which is really exciting. And I just want to touch a little bit base before I wrap up this episode on actually what the fire horse year means going into 2026. I'm just going to bring my notes up here really briefly so we can kind of touch bases on a fire horse year. So the horse obviously represents things like freedom, momentum, independence, bold action, and movement. And it hates feeling trapped. And I feel like that's me to a T. I'm a generator in human design. And if you don't know what human design is, we will be touching more on that this year. But essentially a generator who's somebody who doesn't like being stagnant. So I don't like being stuck. So I definitely feel like the horse is represented in me in that aspect. And it also wants to run towards what feels true. So that kind of hones back into that alignment component. Doing things that make us feel in alignment so that we can move forward. And then the fire representation of the element is passion, truth, destruction of the old, and rapid change. And fire burns away what is no longer aligned, which is everything we've kind of touched on basically in this episode today. So when we put these two things together, it's a year that's going to force honesty and forward motion. So a fire horse year tends to strip away a lot of false identities, relationships, and paths that are no longer aligned, which we kind of did see last year as well. It pushes people into major life decisions that can no longer be avoided. So it could be confrontation, relationship breakdowns that were meant to happen, but you're holding onto them still. It can also create sudden endings and equally sudden breakthroughs, activate courage, independence, and a deep need for freedom. And there is a lot I'm working on this year when it talks about dream life and freedom, so stay tuned. The feel for chaotic if you resist change, but empowering if you move with it. So the fire horse year is often described as rebirth years. They're not gentle. They are very clarifying and helping you get clear and aligned it is with what you want. So something if your life has been built on like obligation, fear, or a version of you that no longer exists, that fire horse energy will challenge it until it either evolves or fall away. So the most easiest way to explain it is a fire horse year burns the old and pushes you towards the most authentic self, whether you feel ready or not. And sometimes it's just you got to jump off the bridge and feel the fear and do it anyways. So that is it for the fire horse analogy. But if you want more in-depth about how this year is going to be such a transformative year, it's definitely something I can jump into. But I just want to thank you for jumping into listening to today's episode on the reflection of 2025, my ins and outs for the year. This is just a super quick, brief episode, but I will be dropping guest episodes really soon, which I can't wait to share with you, as you're going to see an evolution of who I was and what I am becoming, and I'm excited to take you on this journey. So until next time on Abundant and Ambitious, I will see my love soon.